Let's kick things off with a number that should really make you lean in. 5 times. People who have a mentor are 5 times more likely to get promoted than people who don't. 5 times.
I mean, that is a massive advantage. So what is their secret? Is it just that they get a few good tips along the way? Or is there something much, much deeper going on here?
Well, the answer is that the very best mentors aren't just giving advice. They're operating from a completely different playbook. And in this explainer, we're going to break down that playbook piece by piece to see what greatness really looks like. First up, let's just get our heads around the sheer scale of the opportunity here. You could argue that mentorship is the single most powerful career superpower, and almost nobody is using it. And the numbers here are just wild. An incredible 90% of workers who have a mentor say they're satisfied with their jobs. 90%. And yet, only 37% of professionals actually have one. That huge gap, that is the largest untapped lever in your career development, just sitting there. So where does this playbook even start? Well, it begins with a principle so ancient the Greeks carved it in stone. Know thyself. Before a mentor can guide anyone else, they've got to get real about their own strengths, their own blind spots, and their own biases. For a perfect example, just look at Satya Nadella. Back in 2014, when he took over Microsoft, he inherited what was famously a toxic, combative, know-it-all culture. He realized that to change the company, he first had to tap into his own personal transformation. So he replaced that whole combative vibe with what he called a learn-it-all mindset. And listen, this wasn't just some fluffy corporate slogan. It was a fundamental shift away from blame and toward empathy and self-reflection, a shift that came directly from his own deeply personal experiences. Nadella's big insight was this: to lead other people effectively, a leader has to be crystal clear on their own purpose first. It sounds simple, but it's a radical idea. You have to lead yourself before you can lead anyone else. Okay, let's get to our second play, and this one is a paradox that most leaders totally miss. Showing your weakness actually makes you a stronger mentor. The researcher Brené Brown defines vulnerability not as weakness at all, but as our most accurate measure of courage. It's all about stepping into uncertainty and risk. And you simply cannot build trust, which is the absolute bedrock of mentorship, without it.
You know who else figured this out? Google. They did this massive study on their own teams called Project Aristotle. And the single biggest predictor of a high-performing team wasn't individual talent, it wasn't the team structure, it was psychological safety. Just the simple belief that you won't get punished for speaking up or for making a mistake.
The geniuses over at Pixar literally built this idea into their creative process with something called the brain trust, where their top directors give each other brutally honest feedback. Director Andrew Stanton summed up the whole attitude with this brilliant line: be wrong as fast as you can. It's all about creating a space where it's safe to fail. And that idea flows right into the third play in our playbook, the engine of disagreement. Because if it's safe to be wrong, then it's safe to disagree. Great mentors don't want a room full of yes men. They actively go looking for productive conflict and challenge. And the classic example of this, of course, is Abraham Lincoln. After he wins the presidency, he doesn't surround himself with his allies. No, he deliberately appoints his fiercest political rivals to his cabinet. Why? Because he said he had no right to deprive the country of their talent.
You see the exact same principle in the creative partnership of Steve Jobs and Jony Ive. Their collaboration wasn't about being nice. It was all about productive tension. As Ive said, for Jobs, the desire to learn always be the desire to be right. That disagreement was the engine for their innovation.
Okay, so what happens when things inevitably go wrong? Because they will. Well, the fourth play in the playbook is all about the mindset of ownership and how a mentor responds to failure. That's the ultimate test of their character. The difference is really simple, but it's profound. In weak cultures, blame cascades downward from the top. But in a culture of real leadership, like former Navy SEAL Jocko Willink teaches, ownership radiates outward. The leader takes full responsibility, no matter what. Harvard's Amy Edmondson maps this out perfectly. A great mentor creates a space that is high in psychological safety and high in accountability. This is the learning zone. It's a place where it's safe to fail, but you are absolutely expected to learn from that failure. So, let's bring this all together. After you've mastered those 4 plays, what's the ultimate impact? What's the true legacy of operating from this playbook? Well, the numbers here make a case that is just impossible to ignore. Let's start with retention. Companies that have mentoring programs see a 72% retention rate for their mentees. Compare that to just 49% for people not in a program. In today's talent market, that is a game-changing difference. But the impact goes even further, creating real economic and social change. Think about this: a 15% boost in earnings for young people with mentors, minority representation in management more than doubling, jumping from just 9% all the way up to 24%. And promotion rates for women and minorities, they just skyrocket. This isn't just about careers, this is about changing lives. But after all that incredible data, what do mentees themselves say they want most? It's not a mentor with a fancy title or a huge network of connections. The number one thing is unbelievably simple. I trust my mentor. Character trumps status. Presence trumps prestige. You know, Michael Jordan said it perfectly when he was talking about his college coach, Dean Smith. The relationship went way beyond the basketball court. It wasn't about tactics, it was about trust and guidance. He literally saw him as a second father. And that right there brings us to the ultimate truth of this entire playbook. The goal of a great mentor, as Steven Spielberg put it so beautifully, isn't to create a copy of themselves. It's to give someone the opportunity, the safety, and the tools to create themselves. The real legacy isn't what a mentor achieves, but who they empower others to become.